Do you remember the good old days when the end of aisles in supermarkets had specials? Lots of specials, things at half price. It was amazing. Well, I'm sorry, those days are over. Now, because everyone's panic buying and running around like headless chickens, all I see now is things you don't need set at a maximum price. So, the Google review for this store that I know really well is about to be heavily edited.
How dare you rip us off in a time of crisis?
Okay, this is a fairly intense sort of video. I love studying empty shelves and looking at the breakdown of supply chains, and what's gone on in 2020 has given me a complete smorgasbord of empty shelverage to study and contemplate. And this time we're going to take a look at what's going on from mid-March to Easter time. And mid-March is basically when the Prime Minister of Australia asked the public to stop hoarding. Now, what do you think happened after that? Do you think the people listened, or do you think they went crazy and the hoarding got worse? Well, this video is going to show you what happened, and this time I've done it in video format and not stills. And right now, let's remember what the Prime Minister said to the people of Australia.
On bulk purchasing of supplies, stop hoarding. I can't be more blunt about it. Stop it. It's not sensible. It's not helpful. Stop doing it. It's ridiculous. It's un-Australian, and it must stop.
Okay, we were spoken to like naughty children, and this video has been taken in multiple stores in the part of town where I live, which is the northern part of Sydney. And this style of activity has been going on for basically 5 weeks and dragging on into almost the 6th week, and it doesn't seem to stop. In fact, I could almost say this is becoming a game between the supermarket chains versus the customers. And I can tell you this, the one that's winning, well, it's not the customers. The supermarkets have got complete control in the way we keep coming back to their stores for the items that seem to never be on the shelves. And I'll explore that idea via my own Google review pictures in this video. I have said in the previous empty shelverage videos that I was being sent links of a Japanese vlogger who was showing what was going on in Japan. The channel is called Only in Japan Go. And the first signs of trouble go right back to the 26th of January, which in Australia was Australia Day weekend, but it was also the time when the Chinese New Year was on. And of course, that's the time when there's a lot of Chinese people who may live outside of China will go back to China, visit their families, and then return to the countries where they live. After the 26th of January, there were other videos from this YouTuber that started to detail the train wreck that was developing in Japan. He also had to speak about things in a fairly cryptic way because there's a YouTube sensitive issue policy going on, and anybody who was talking about certain things were getting smacked out of the ballpark because it was deemed a sensitive issue. I think that was a massive mistake by Google/YouTube because people in Korea and Japan were detailing things that were really important to see and hear, but unfortunately we can't wind back history now. The damage has been done. So just imagine if you were being tapped on the shoulder back on the 26th of January saying, hey, you better be careful, look what's happening here, get ready for something. And I certainly know myself when I did my first empty shelves and supply chain breakdown video, a lot of people in the United States were saying, oh, come on, Leo, that's not happening where I live. We don't see any of that going on. But I can tell you something, I bet you see it now. In this complete mayhem where people were panic buying everything, I did talk about nuts in a previous video saying they were not being purchased and hoarded, and it continues on the same. I can still see plenty of nuts in the store, which I find very curious. The other things that weren't being touched, and this may surprise people in the USA, was water. There's stacks and stacks of water. Iced tea, which struggles to sell in Australia. In America, if you open up someone's fridge, you will often find a jug of iced tea or sweetened iced tea if you're down the south. In Australia, you open up someone's fridge and you will find a jug of water. And another thing that wasn't being touched was all those miraculously overpriced and over-caffeinated energy drinks. But maybe if you live somewhere else in the world, you'll be able to tell me a totally different story. I'm curious to hear. So in this video, you're starting to get a real feel for what's not on the shelves and how drastically different the store is when it's in this mode. And when the shops are like this, I think shoppers start to basically act like headless chickens. People seem to be different when the shops look ratty and empty. And there's something that I noticed that really made me think, what's going on here? There seems to be some scam or game going on. Now, let me show you the end aisle displays via my Google reviews. Okay, you're seeing them now. You're seeing the way it was set up as specials, and it was always stacks of stock. Back in the good old days, the end of aisle area was always the specials area. But let's take a look at those end of aisles just after ScoMo said stop hoarding, and all of a sudden we see a very different game going on. We see pallets of stock of things that you would normally not buy. Nothing is set to a special price. It was set to the normal high price. And the only flour there for a time was the most expensive premium flour. So what is going on there? As customers, are we that stupid to fall for this? Maybe the biggest impact of imagery is if I go flip-flop between normal times versus crazy times. Normal times versus crazy times. Normal times versus crazy times. So do you think that's fair to do, to change the end of aisles to this bulk items at full price area? I was just totally disgusted to see that style of retailing going on. And my Google review of this store now reflects this. I suppose it goes back to that idea there's no law against making a profit, but why do you have to do this when people are on their knees and a lot of people are out of work? And I suppose you're wondering about toilet paper. Now, this is the item that we first noticed being panic bought and completely sold out. That was happening in Australia right up the end of February. And after ScoMo said to stop panic buying, well, people just kept grabbing more and more if it was ever in the store. And sure, the stores started to put in purchasing limits across many items. That didn't stop the empty shelvage, and I think that only enhanced the panic buying. And if ever there was some rolls of toilet paper in store, it was quickly grabbed up. People got on their phones saying, hey, the Quilton's in stock at the moment. And it became like a badge of honour to be able to walk around with your trolley with toilet paper in it, or walk out of the store carrying a bundle of toilet paper. It is so bizarre to witness. Grabbing toilet paper has been like the bait within store, and the supermarkets are saying, oh, this is a bulky item. If we ordered a whole truck full of toilet paper, well, there's nothing else for the store. I think this is a complete and utter game that's going on, because now what I see in the toilet paper aisle is other things apart from toilet paper, and it's also the same where the paper towels are usually put. Instead of paper towels, there's now junk food. I mean, give me a break, it's just the weirdest thing to see going on. Of course, this study looks right up to Easter time, so I did see the Easter eggs and Easter chocolates in store. To me, there seemed to be a lot of Easter stock not being sold. I noticed some stores were putting heavy discounts on it prior to Easter. I also saw the Easter novelty things that would normally be bought for the Easter hats, for the Easter hat parades in schools, but everything has been cancelled. Basically, all the children are at home with their parents. And maybe what was hampering the Easter sales was when people went shopping, you often didn't take your children with you because you were being told to stay home. You only went out to buy essential things or if you were working. So my guess is you'll be able to pick up lots of very sugary chocolate after Easter for a very good price. In this retail fail nightmare crisis, one of the really important things that you needed to try to buy and find was soap or hand sanitizer. Those two items have been basically completely and utterly blown off the shelves for weeks and weeks now. This had me looking at the products that I had at home, and I started to look at which countries do they come from. So I can see some items come from Indonesia, I can see another item comes from Thailand, and what surprised me was the really important alcohol-based hand sanitizer, and I've got two versions of it, it's made in Australia. So what's going on there? Why has this really important product been impossible to purchase in Australia? And I think after this crisis, a lot of countries are going to re-evaluate where do the really important things come from. If you're relying on overseas countries to produce really important things and the supply chain gets snapped in the middle, all of a sudden you're left with nothing. Yes, so many countries rely on goods or components of goods that come out of China, and from here on, things have got to change. I think what's caught me by surprise is the depth of the panic buying that's going on, how it morphs from one thing to another, and the inability of the supermarkets to come in and properly restock their shops. Yes, I do see trolleys and trolleys of items to be restocked onto the shelves, but no matter how much miraculous restocking goes on, there's always these really important supermarket items that seem to be in short supply. So what this sets up is a peculiar game where people may go to the shops with a simple 10-item shopping list, and they may only be able to find 5 or 6 of the items, and the things which tend to always be missing is things like eggs, pasta, potatoes in the fresh format and also the frozen good format, soap in bar form and also liquid form, kitchen cleaning spray, sugar, noodles, and there's lots and lots of other everyday things which are very difficult to find and in very short supply. There has been a syndrome of morphing shortages, so things that were there one week, the next week you find they're all gone, and a classic example is because everybody is stuck at home for a long time, they're deciding, oh, it's time to clean up the home, we'll go and buy mops and buckets and all the things you need to do that. So when you go to the store, what do you find? Absolutely nothing. So you ask yourself, is that stuff made in China? Yes. Has the supply chain broken down from China? Yes. So I hope that paints you a picture of what I'm seeing. Maybe you're going to tell me what you see, or maybe you're seeing things improve. Yes, I am seeing some things improve. It's now easier to buy meat. The fresh produce seems to have caught up with the over-purchasing that was going on a few weeks back. But you try and buy a dozen eggs, and they're near impossible to find. Have the chickens been told to stop laying because it's a lockdown? There's plenty of Easter eggs, but as for eggs from chickens, impossible. And when you think about people hoarding things, well, you've got to store it somewhere. So let's think about frozen goods, and I noticed a lot of frozen areas were heavily impacted by over-purchasing, and unless you've got multiple refrigerators, storing frozen goods can be fairly tricky. I did hear in the news and people talking about a big rush on refrigerators, but it took many weeks for the supermarkets to play catch up with frozen goods, where if you did go down to the shops, you had some confidence in finding a simple bag of frozen chips. If people were hoarding frozen goods, it's not a very sensible thing to hoard, because if you do have a power failure, unless you've got a generator, well, there's a good chance you're going to lose all your frozen goods. And another curious one was junk food, and I did notice at the beginning of the panic buying, the junk food wasn't being touched, but a few weeks in and people were really going for the junk food. And you can sort of call junk food comfort food. When people are worried, they tend to, unfortunately, go for the junk food. And maybe an extension of that idea is a lot of the quick and fast convenience foods like noodles and cup of noodles and whatnot, a lot of that stuff was basically being run off the shelves, and it took weeks and weeks and weeks. In fact, at the time when I'm making this video, it's impossible to get something like Maggi 2-minute noodles. I think Maggi 2-minute noodles is an imported product into Australia. I hope I'm right there. I did try to find out by looking on websites and Wikipedia pages, but it's fairly hidden, the source of where things come from. Anyway, they're nice and yummy and very easy to eat. I think this is a really important event to record and remember. In the future, we will look back at this time and we've got to remember the things that have gone wrong, so next time when it happens, we don't get caught by the same traps. And in particular, and I did bring this up earlier, there were people from certain countries giving out some really important information very early on, yet you had some big tech companies deciding it's best to cover and smother this sort of information up. I think that was a massive mistake. And there was one thing that I witnessed going on, and this really annoyed me, was there were times when it was really hard to get like a basic loaf of bread, yet in the dumpster of the same shopping centre where I saw a shortage of bread, there was stacks of bread being thrown out every day. And seeing that really grinded on me. Apart from bread being thrown out, they always seem to be throwing out milk crates and plastic crates. So much for things that are meant to be recycled. I'm not sure what's going on there, but it has to stop. Like I said in the other empty shelves study videos, this is feeling like a bad dream that you never wake up out of. It's also feeling like a bit of a strange science fiction that you're caught up in, but it's also feeling a little bit like that film Groundhog Day. The local gym where the redback spiders live, well, it's closed and it's really unusual not to see people on the treadmills there. I see in the suburb we have the riot police getting about. I've never seen that before. And I went to the local big shopping centre. It was free parking, there's no tickets anymore, the car park is nearly empty, and it's when I went there I started to really feel the impact of what's going on. I was there at lunchtime on the Thursday before Easter. I had to go to a pharmacy to get some essential items, and then just wandering around and being totally amazed with what I was seeing. I was thinking, wow, there's so many people unemployed here, and it's not just the people in the shops, it's the people who supply to the shops. It's also the people who make the items that go into the shops. Mind you, a lot of those people would be people overseas because Australia heavily relies on imported goods, especially from China. And from this massive shutdown, and I'm only looking at a tiny fragment of it, there's going to be a lot of damage done, and it's going to take a long time to repair the damage which is done during the shutdown. So there you go, that's what I was seeing, and hopefully I've captured the time when I saw the most graphic empty shelves going on. And it really all stems back to when I heard the Prime Minister say, stop hoarding. Of course there's going to be a component of people who say, oh, are people hoarding, are they? Well, we're not hoarding yet, we better start. Maybe there was some of that going on, but I think there was a lot of that cause and effect syndrome going on as well. It's a moment in time where people will say, oh, remember before that period of time? Just like 9/11, people say, I remember before 9/11 these things happened, but after 9/11 things changed. Well, it's the same with what's going on right at this time. And hopefully it's like a once-in-a-lifetime event. It's a very important event to capture and remember for whoever has to suffer through it next time.